Hi, welcome to Let's Grow, conversations with your local mental health and wellness specialists. I'm Linda Kelly, and I am the owner and founder of the Kelly Mental Health Foundation. Based in Thunder Bay, we're a nonprofit organization that is seeking to provide education and counseling and mental health services to people of the North. I'm here today with Kelly Graham. Kelly Graham is a psychotherapist and counselor, and she's here to talk about some of the most inaccurate descriptions of counseling and assumptions that come with that. So, hello, Kelly.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, tell me about yourself briefly. You've been on the show before.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm a psychotherapist and counselor. I've been in the field for a number of years doing different things. And yeah, last time I was here discussing wedding stuff. So
Right. Primary areas of practice for you?
I love trauma, working with trauma, different things like anxiety and depression. My biggest passion is helping sexual assault survivors. So
Okay, wonderful. That's a big job.
yes.
So today we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions about counseling. So you must hear a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, tell us about some of those inaccurate assumptions.
A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to come in, I'm going to lay down on the couch, and you're just going to psychoanalyze me the whole time. Kind of a Freudian approach to counseling. They think you just come in, lay down, I blame everything on your mother or your father, and that's how it works.
But that's usually right.
Sometimes.
So there's no couch or...
No, my office is too small for a couch. If I had a couch, I'd probably be sleeping on it.
Okay.
But we do have comfy chairs that you could sit on. Yes.
Good. Okay, so what you're saying is people will often assume that if I go to counseling, I'm going to be like laying down facing away from the therapist. I don't know what you're thinking or saying about me. That's kind of the picture you get?
Yeah, and that's not at all true. You sit there, I sit across from you, we talk. It's just like a conversation, We make eye contact, we get to know each other, we kind of build a relationship.
Wow, okay. And, in doing that, building a relationship, why is that necessary to do anything in counseling?
If I was to go and just talk to some stranger sitting behind me, I wouldn't. I mean, I've had PTSD, and if somebody is sitting right behind me, I kind of want to smack them.
Okay.
But if you're actually with the person and you're talking to the person, you get to trust the person more. You get to build that relationship. You begin to trust them and feel like you can open up to them. And that's why it's so important to have that relationship.
Right, so it's safer then.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels like more comfortable having that conversation. But then, I mean, in the same breath, people might say, well, why do I need to just go and chat with someone? I can talk to my friends.
Yes. It's nice to talk to somebody who's removed from your situation completely, somebody who's non-judgmental, who might have more education and experience in certain areas, so they can give you tools and give you tips to kind of help you along that way. And I mean, we're not going to go talk to anybody about what you're telling us because we're bound by confidentiality. So you can come to us and trust us, and it stays there. It stays in the room.
Wow. So in terms of that confidentiality piece, that must bring up some assumptions as well.
Absolutely. I mean, people are afraid that, if you report something about your child, that we're going to call CAS and they're going to take your kids away. And that's not true at all. I mean, there are limits to confidentiality. So if we do believe that a child is being abused or neglected, then we do have to make that call. But we're not going to go and make that call behind your back. A lot of the times we're going to talk to you and be like, hey, so you reported this to me. I'm going to have to call, and we'll let you even be part of the call if you want. But we're going to talk to you about that. And a lot of the times, they don't try and take your kids away. They try and help you. They try and give you the resources and education you need to keep your kids, because nobody wants to just take your kids away from you. Mm-hmm.
So what is the benefit then of, say if I'm a parent and I say, I hurt my kid in a way that is not okay. Like I spanked them too hard, I left a bruise, right? Mm-hmm. So what is the benefit of me being in on that call to CAS?
You get to tell them your side of the story. You get to say, this is what happened. You get to show them your feelings and your thoughts, you know. I know that was wrong. I know I did this and I want to make it right. You know, so they don't assume that you're just somebody who's malicious and hurting kids. They can see the empathy. They could see the support that you have for your child and that you want that help for both of you.
And perhaps that understanding of having
Absolutely.
crossed the line. And not everybody's aware of what is crossing a line.
Yes.
Right. So then with the other limits of confidentiality, just out of curiosity, what are they that you have to lay out for people?
So besides the child being abused or neglected, or even suspecting that, there's, if for some reason we're subpoenaed in a legal proceeding, we have to release our case notes. If there's any abuse by a healthcare professional, we have to report that. Or if your safety's at risk, we may have to call an emergency contact or send you to the hospital, depending on how severe it is.
Okay. And safety being at risk, can you just define that?
So that's if somebody is feeling suicidal. And you know, people have suicidal thoughts. It's something that comes up. But just because you have suicidal thoughts doesn't mean that you're going to act on them. So just because you say, hey, I'm kind of feeling this way, it doesn't mean I'm going to call the hospital and make you go to the hospital right away. It's gauging how far you're going to take that. You know, if you have a plan, if you have a way you want to do it, gauging that way, then being like, okay, we need to set some parameters around your safety. We may make a safety plan in the office. I may have to set you there. May just have to tell somebody that you're close with, or we can just talk about your suicidal thoughts, you know, if you're not acting on them, and explore why they're there and how you can cope with them.
Right. So it's not like I say, you know, sometimes I feel like I want to die, and immediately you're on the phone with the police.
Absolutely not. I'm sure everybody feels like that at some point in their lives, and that's
yeah.
completely normal.
Yeah.
And we can have an open and honest conversation about that.
Yeah, I think that's really common for people to be afraid that if I say the wrong thing, they're going to lock me up.
Yeah, and that is not what we want to do at all.
No. Yeah, that's also, I think, a huge fear about the children piece. There's a huge misconception that if you're a social worker, you're just there to swoop in and take people's kids.
Yeah, and that's not what you want to do, because that's not in best interest of the child most of the time. You know, you want to try and keep the family together as much as you can.
And try to provide that support.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But of course, I guess you can't provide that support if people aren't being honest or truthful about what's going on.
That's true.
Yeah. So in counseling, I think that kind of goes back to building that relationship. Mm-hmm. So what happens if something like this, like a disclosure, happens and that relationship isn't there yet?
Then it can be difficult because they may not fully trust you. They may think you're going to do something to try and take away their kids. So it's really helping be there for them in that moment, because they're your client, they're the person who you're working with. You're in their corner trying to help support them and help them in the best way you can, and really helping show them that and verbalize that to them is very important.
So with the limits of confidentiality, where otherwise everything is completely, you know, between you and the therapist, there's the risk, there's just if you disclose childhood abuse or neglect, so someone is actually in danger of being hurt.
Yes, absolutely.
Risk to yourself or others, so there's an imminent threat.
Yes.
Right. If there's a legal proceeding, and that's only when the case notes are called, not just you happen to be getting sued and
Yes,
you're
absolutely.
done. Okay, and then abuse by a healthcare practitioner.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yes.
Okay. When we come back, we're going to discuss more of the myths about counseling. Welcome back to Let's Grow. I'm Linda Kelly, your host, and I'm here with Kelly Graham. So Kelly, we were talking about some of the common misconceptions about counseling. So what are the more unusual misconceptions or assumptions you've heard about people that are not sure about counseling?
A lot of people think, oh, it's only women that come to counseling.
It's only for women.
or that I'm supposed to be a lot older. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So there is sort of an age bias?
I think so, yeah. A lot of people think I want to see somebody who's been through a lot, who's kind of old and wise and has done it all. And when they come in and see me, they might think, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about because she looks pretty young. Even though I do, I have a lot of experience. I've worked with clients who've had anxiety, depression, multiple traumas in their life. I have my own history of going through trauma, and I have a lot of education to help back me up. And while I will be learning throughout my life as well, I am competent, I would say, to help people in their struggles and helping them find a way to heal.
I'd imagine that sometimes, even though they might be taken off guard by the fact that you're not, an old gray person with glasses, that might actually be more comforting or more comfortable.
Absolutely, especially when it is kind of younger people, because you can kind of help build that relationship a little bit better, and especially from working with kind of teenagers or kids. I can joke about being young and hip. So
Yeah. You know what a meme is. You know what Facebook is.
Yeah.
Your Facebook pictures, I'm sure, aren't taken like this.
Yeah.
So that ability to make a relationship is
Yes.
just a little bit easier, or at least from your experience.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. Okay. So it seems like you could be more effective just by, just on account of your experience that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think being kind of younger helps you have that more relaxed attitude. Mm-hmm. You aren't seen as this professional, even though you are a professional, but you can kind of be more relaxed and create that more laid back atmosphere.
Right. And when you say being seen as professional, it almost sounds like more being seen as someone that's detached.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Whereas the counselor's part of the process. I mean, it's you, it's your journey, it's you doing all the work, but we're there to help you too. We're there building that relationship with you.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. So walk me through this. Okay, I am going through anxiety. I start to realize what it is. I finally say, okay, I got to talk to someone about it. What do I do?
Well, you can look up different mental health services that are in Thunder Bay, I'm assuming. You can call places, you can look online. Sometimes even different clinics will have biographies of the clinicians that you can read, so you can see who you'd kind of be a good fit with. So that would be good as well. Some clinics are on a fee-for-fee basis, but your insurance can cover it, and others do provide services for free if you fall into certain categories. So it's important to be aware of your financial limitations as well. So then basically reach out and contact, email, phone, and then they'll be able to set up an appointment with a counselor, and you'll be able to get in pretty soon and start talking to them.
And what is that first session like?
The first session we go over confidentiality, which we already talked about, and it's nothing crazy, it's nothing intense, it's just getting to know you. It's just gathering information, your background, what you do for work, what kind of you're struggling with, what areas you want help with, and it's just getting to know each other. If you have any questions for me, let me know. So.
And there's got to be differences as well with different agencies, different clinics in the intake process. Like, if I'm going through a really hard time, I'm probably not going to want to tell all those problems to, the secretary.
Yes.
Right. So is it different for different places?
It can be. Some people have more formal intake. And then there's other places that it's more just relaxed, and you can just talk to the counselor and kind of do the intake that way.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, that's really good. And today's day and age, it's probably nice that there are more online options.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you do as a mental health professional to help people get better? Is sort of differentiating from we're just sitting and talking it out.
Everybody uses different theories you'd hear. So there's things like you've probably heard of DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, or CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. Everybody uses a variety of different theories to help you, depending on who you are, what your situation is, what you think works well, what doesn't. One that I'm really getting into right now is Emdr, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. So,
what is that?
Yeah, so that's kind of a mouthful. It's a really good therapy. It's kind of quicker than just sitting and talking, but it's also intense. So what we do is basically when you go through a trauma or something traumatic in your life, it's stored differently in your brain than any other memory because of the traumatic impact. So what we do is we use kind of a dual stimulus. So this could be different eye movements, different physical sensations such as tapping, or I even have buzzers that people like to use. And this kind of interrupts the theta waves in your brain and distracts that, which makes processing trauma difficult. So then we can go in and start working on the trauma and going through the different adaptive networks that have been created because of the trauma. So, when you have a traumatic memory, it affects different memories, feelings, sensations, thoughts. So we kind of go in and kind of clear each channel. We talk about the thoughts associated with this memory and the feelings and go through everything. And it brings everything up, which can be intense, but it really helps you kind of reprocess all of that trauma and be able to come out in a healthier, more positive light on the other side.
Sounds intense.
Yes.
I've also heard it described as the trauma being like the fire, where the smoke is something that has permeated a lot of your life, a lot of the way that you've adapted to different situations. And so rather than trying to damper the smoke, you're going back to the fire and then you're exploring what has the smoke affected.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, if you don't go back to the fire, it's going to be in your life forever. So it's really important.
It sounds like you're very excited about that.
I am.
So tell me about CBT. CBT is the most commonly used, most empirical, evidence-based therapy.
Yes. So that's cognitive behavioral therapy. What you're doing is you're going and looking at people's different thought patterns and beliefs, seeing if any of them are kind of more negative and distorted and where they come from and how they kind of affect your feelings and your behaviors throughout your life. So really taking a look at them and challenging them and trying to kind of rebuild them into more positive beliefs and more positive thinking patterns.
And that's something that probably is used a whole lot with depression.
Absolutely, yes. I don't know a counselor who doesn't use CBT.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's changing your mind to change the behaviors.
Yes.
Right? So then, if I'm struggling with depression and, I'm feeling like a failure, what's an intervention that you would use?
So we kind of go and look at why you're feeling like a failure. Where are these events coming from that make you feel like a failure? Are there different cognitive distortions you're falling into? And then we kind of talk about how to challenge these distortions, how to challenge your thinking pattern. And it's kind of like retraining your brain to think more positively instead of more negatively, which is work, but it's not daunting or intimidating. Yeah.
But then it's not also what I've heard termed toxic positivity, where it's just, yes, everything's great, everything's fine, I'm good, right? It's realistic.
Absolutely.
It's just not self-defeating.
Yes.
Okay.
You're not getting stuck in those thought patterns that are just catastrophizing the situation and dragging you down and throwing you into anxiety and depression.
Well, that sounds great. Sounds like it's an anchor to be able to pull yourself out of this.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what it's like to be a therapist. And welcome back to Let's Grow. I'm Linda Kelly, your host, and I'm here with Kelly Graham. And now we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a therapist. Kelly, what is it like for you?
It's tiring but rewarding.
Fair.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me more.
I got into this profession because throughout my whole life, I've always been there to help people, and it's something I've always enjoyed doing. So I thought, well, might as well make a career out of it. So that's what I ended up doing. And it's amazing to go through the journeys with people, to help watch them heal, to help watch them learn things about themselves that they never knew before. And then it can also be exhausting because you do have a lot of clients and they do have a lot of trauma. So you're kind of listening to all that trauma and trying to not take it on so that you're not completely impacted by it as well.
Every therapist, I'd imagine, I mean, we are human beings.
Yes.
And we have our own trigger points.
Yes.
What comes up for you that's really hard to talk about?
I wouldn't say it's hard to talk about, but a lot of the times when I work with sexual assault survivors and they get into the nitty-gritty of their story and just about how much they feel like they're crazy and how much they feel like it's their fault and all those self-blaming thoughts brings me back to when I was healing from my sexual assault and how I felt. And you still do. I mean, it's a lifelong struggle. You still have those feelings. So it kind of reminds me of my situation, and I could do nothing but feel for them and want them to just hug them better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd imagine hugging's not a good idea at that point.
Yeah, probably not.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, that must come up a lot for people, just hearing about situations that are hard not to connect to emotionally.
Yeah.
So how do you react? I mean, as a client, I bet there's so many clients that are afraid to say certain thing because they're afraid of that reaction of the therapist. How do you react?
Neutrally, just kind of empathetically, just being there with them. You don't want to be like, oh, wow, that's a lot you went through, kind of blowing it up, making it this big deal when somebody's exposing their life to you, telling you everything that's going on. You just want to be there and just be with them. So that's really important, to not get caught up on the facts of their story and just be with them. And, it might be shocking in your mind. You might go, oh, wow, look at that. But don't express that to the person, just being there with them.
So as a therapist, how do you not take that home?
It can be hard. I used to work on the street outreach service a few years ago, and I learned quickly that you can't bring stuff home with you. I lost about 50 clients that died on the street. I would go home and knew that clients were sleeping in bank vestibules because there was no place for them to go. And it's hard because you feel hopeless sometimes. But it's important to realize the difference you are making in people's lives and the way that you are helping. And knowing that you're doing what you can do when you can do it. It's important to take care of yourself. So trying to leave work at work. And there's always going to be that kind of case that sticks with you and it's kind of hard to let go. But, going home and just doing something to take care of yourself, going to a colleague and being, hey, can I just debrief with you for a minute? I have this case that's just kind of heavy. I just need to talk about it and get it out. That can be really helpful.
The debriefing piece is so important,
Yes.
Not only for therapists, but for anybody that's going through something that they haven't experienced before.
Yes, absolutely. Because just talking about it can kind of really helps.
I've certainly read a lot of studies that have said basically within about 48 hours of something really traumatic or shocking, anything that changes your worldview, the better your chances are to get through it if you talk to someone within that point.
Absolutely. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, is reaching out. Whether it's stigma involved because of something, whether it's they're afraid of how the other person's going to react. A lot of people tend to shut down and try and hold it in, but it's really important to reach out and talk to somebody.
Well, it's so difficult in that first little while. I almost think, so I've responded like as a crisis intervention worker to workplace incidents. So having to be on site within 24 to 48 hours of the incident, everybody gets in a group, we discuss what happened, and then of course outward referrals are made. But I mean, that's sort of formalized, right? That's the workplace really heading it off. In other situations where I've been intervening in crises, there was suicide in one of our remote First Nation communities. I would go up to provide counseling, but it wouldn't be the people that just lost someone who came to talk to me. It was the people who lost someone a year ago.
Yeah.
They came to talk because they were ready.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Some people it takes longer for them to be ready to talk about anything. Some people it takes longer to process and be able to put the words to it. I mean, you have all of these feelings and it can be overwhelming. And then when a similar event happens, it can trigger all those memories and all those feelings coming up again. And then you go, okay, this is something I need to talk about because I know this is affecting me and I need to do something about it.
So, I mean, I know that usually as therapists we make the worst clients, but do you take your own advice that you give to clients?
I try to. I'm not perfect. I mean, I've been to counseling before myself, and I've found it amazingly helpful. But I'll have to remind myself, when I get stuck in these cognitive distortions, okay, so what am I doing? What's my thinking pattern here? Is this really what's going to happen or not? And, even when I'm having anxiety, just reminding myself to breathe. Yeah.
I kind of do the same, except if I'm in a really bad way, I'll be aware of how unreasonable I'm being,
Yep.
and I'll still want to stomp my feet and just say, just let me be this right now.
It's hard because you have the two parts of you talking. You have the therapist part going, you should do this. And then you're like, you know what? No, not right now.
Yeah. Don't tell me to be mindful. I am mindful.
Yeah.
So it's hard actually, I think, knowing all of those skills and then trying to implement them. Meanwhile, we're telling people, please implement this. This is going to help you. But I think it can also just be helpful knowing that you got another card to play.
Absolutely.
You have options, that you are not at the end of the road. And sounds like with counseling, even just with all of the different types of counseling there are, and there's so many more.
Oh, absolutely.
There's just different ways that you can go about getting through a difficult period of time, making yourself more adaptable and flexible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're probably thinking counseling's beneficial, but for who?
Everybody.
Everybody.
I bet you anybody could use it at any point in their life. Just talking to somebody who's a neutral third party, who's going to be non-judgmental, can just help you with anything, even if it's just to let you vent and not have it get back to anybody. It's nice just to talk to somebody. So I really think it could be beneficial for anybody and everybody.
Not a weakness, it's a strength.
Absolutely.
Helps, pushes you in the right direction.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a little bit biased, obviously. But thank you so much for coming on and trying to dispel some of the myths about counseling. This has been really great.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.